I'm going to walk you through the situation that I found myself in, and that's being quite dysregulated today, and even this whole week, to be honest, after what was a highly functional couple of weeks before. Hi, my name's Amanda Foxon-Hill, and this is Suddenly Autistic, my vlog where I'm explaining some of the things, the insights that I've had since my diagnosis of autism relatively late in the piece, in my mid to late 40s. So what I found is that maintaining my mental health is almost a full-time job, and something that I have to devote quite a lot of resources to, thanks to the way that my ADHD, so autism and ADHD brain, intersects with my personality, social expectations, rules, routines, obligations, even my own basic needs. So the video that I'm making now and the information that I'm sharing is very personal. It's we're all very complex beings. Because there's so many facets to what creates an individual, our individuality, it's both helpful and confusing to see so many different stories out there. And I'm adding to that possibly helpfulness and definitely some confusion by sharing my own. But I think the way that I've always found it helpful to communicate about these internal systems that go on and about the symptomology of that as an individual is to keep it individual. This is my story of how I experience my autism and ADHD, and some of the other things, because I have a generalized anxiety disorder and some complex PTSD. But what I'm mostly talking about now is an experience, something that happens on a regular basis that makes my productivity quite lumpy. So I can have dips in my productivity and dips in my mental health, and they coincide. That's usually what's happened. Mental health, productivity down, and then other things. And I wanted to delve into that because that's what's happened to me today. Maintaining my mental health is something that I have to work on. And I've recognized that this is not just like I can't pin everything down to, oh, it's because of the ADHD, or it's because of the autism, or it's because of trauma, or it's because of these things are important by themselves, and they gave me an important framework through which to consider what the whys and hows and whats and whens and wheres of what goes on for me. But they don't tell me the answer, as nothing does tell you the answer about yourself better than a narrative and a pure understanding of everything that's going on. So it's a piece of the puzzle, not the whole puzzle. But with that in mind, I'm going to walk you through the situation that I found myself in, and that's being quite dysregulated today, and even this whole week, to be honest, after what was a highly functional couple of weeks before. So what I found is that my mind tires much sooner than my physical body. And this, I believe, is due in a large part to my non-discerning, expansive attention, which basically means I vacuum up everything in an environment undiscerningly. So whatever I'm in, I'm clocking and noticing everything about, let me just clarify that. I may not notice the same things as other people. I may miss some big things that are going on in that space, but I am focusing a lot of attention onto a lot of different things. And those things may be deemed irrelevant to other people, and that I actually miss the most important thing. Or I might focus on something that is actually turned out to be very important and miss some of the other details. But what matters here is that I'm not directing my attention in these novel, different, changing spaces. I'm usually being driven by, my brain has gone off on its own tangent, and it's kind of like, we don't know what's important here, so let's just take all of it in, or as much as we can. And that causes my brain and my body and myself, I should say, because it's the whole me, that causes me to feel completely filled up, like I've got a lot of stuff stuck in my head. So this discerning, expansive attention, vacuuming things up, is something that can happen with struggles with discernment, with your ADHD type of symptoms, with monotropism, which is more autistic, and with, in general, the envelope, the bucket that is executive function problems or difficulties. So the fact that I experience an environment like that is in keeping with my diagnosis, but the nuanced things that I may or may not cotton on to, pick up, or how I feel about that afterwards and during that assault of the senses, is personality, is prior experience, is socializing, is level of support and comfort and psychological safety, lots of different things. So I think it's important to remember the complexities of all that, because there are some environments that are novel and new that are very relaxing and that really fill my cup, and there are other environments which might seem relaxing and enjoyable for other people that completely overwhelm me. So it's very hard for other people to go, oh, I know what she needs. And that can, and actually even the act of other people telling me that they, or sort of asserting that they probably know me better than I know myself, can be very triggering for me and deeply upsetting, and send me into this next bit, which is this anxiety spiral. When my head is full and I vacuumed up all this information, sensory information and otherwise, I notice my mind starts to get tired, and my tired mind can then start to go into some more mental illness package behavior, I suppose you could say. That includes noticing and responding to things that I feel triggered by much sooner than I would do if I was not feeling so overwhelmed. So it's almost like the world becomes more triggering. I'm more keyed into noticing and responding to those triggers. And that, I believe, is due to what we would classify in sort of a psychology space, I suppose. And I say we, I'm not a psychologist, but that would be because of a window of tolerance being closed. So the things that I can tolerate, instead of being wide open and encompass a whole range of different things that might be difficult and challenging during the day, it's like all of a sudden that's got really shrunk, and any little thing, my tolerance is reduced, my capacity is down. So I go out into the world, into an environment that's quite otherwise overwhelming for me, a lot of sensory input to take, a lot of things to take in sensorially. My body may be tired, but not as tired as my mind. My tired mind then is more likely to be triggered due to this lack of smaller window of tolerance, and those triggers then start a cascade of anxiety and anxious response. The anxiety response, in a mind sense for me, involves certain thought patterns that can come in, and sorry, I'm just trying to have a look around there. And one of them is rumination. So it's almost like I'm triggered into an anxiety response, which could also include being triggered by the brain sensing that it's full, or the mind sensing that I've had too much. I've reached capacity. I need to get out of that. But instead of leaving and resting and recovering and then going back and seeing what we've got there, it skips that rest and recover bit and goes straight to, oh my God, what are we going to do with it? We've got too much, we can't do anything. And all these very intense mental processes start off, including catastrophizing, which is where you're looking and interpreting all the different outcomes of what you've taken in and where you are and whatever, and planning for the worst, really. It also involves a thing called perseveration, which is literally persevering with the behavior or thought pattern long after it's useful. So that could involve me having phrases and information or visual flashbacks going around and round in my head of what I've seen, where I've been, or how it made me feel, which can be a bit more of an abstraction. But that perseveration takes over, which literally makes you feel like you are going mad. If you've got the same, I quite often have days or at least chunks of time where I just have the same, like an echolalia thing, which again is very common for autism I'm not sure about ADHD, but the brain tends to catch patterns very easily. It's that pattern catching. So I'll have phrases going through my head, or I'll keep remembering what someone said, and it's not useful. It's not adding any more information to me. It's not helping me process. It's literally that I'm just having these thoughts and ideas come into my head that just keep going round and round and round, and literally make you feel like you've gone nuts, which might be, yeah, that's how it feels to me, like absolutely crazy. So all of that goes on, and this is generally fueled by either shame or frustration, because I notice it's not like I think I know for me, when I have, before I realised my own struggles, if I'd see someone going down the path of being mentally dysregulated, I'd think, well, do they not know this? Like, are they not realising that they're their own worst enemy, that they're causing, or they are at the root of some of this distress that they're in? And I would say to that, now that I know myself better, yes, I do. I know. And that's an awful both responsibility and a burden to carry, because I know that this is my anxiety, and these thought patterns are not helpful, and they are an anxious response by an anxious or an anxiety riddled brain. I know some of the things I can do to get out of it, but it's like being on a roller coaster at that point. You are riding the bit where they've got you to the top of the hill, and now they're just letting rip. So yes, I am aware of it. I'm holding on for dear life, and I'm hoping that at some point we'll get to a point where we can catch our breath and start to slow this ride down. So that having that level of insight while being in a dysregulated and anxious spiral is quite cruel, because what it does is it opens up a level of opportunity for shame. Why am I letting this happen again? How come I'm in this position again? When am I going to be able to keep myself safe? Why didn't anyone else help me? And that then starts a conversation of frustration. Why are other people putting me in a position like this? I just need help. Whatever. There can be all sorts of blaming and shaming and what's wrong with the world, and then a loss of hope. But at the same time, my body, so I'm going through all this in my head, and all this is happening, and it's really intense, and my body is leaving me. Basically, my body is becoming more clumsy, more awkward, because that mind-body connection is weakened. I'm literally living in my head. So all of my resources are going towards my thoughts and my feelings, my sensory body, my limbs, etc., are less under my control than usual. And to say that is saying something, because I already have problems with my interoception, so what's going on in my body and reading my body signs, proprioception, knowing where my body is in time and space and having control over my limbs and my movements. So I'm likely to knock things off, be very expressive with my hands like I'm doing now, or run into things with a lot of force because I didn't see them, knock myself as I'm walking through a room. So basically the head's over here with all this unhelpful thought patterns. The body has been sort of severed from the control center a little bit more than usual, and it's doing its own thing. And that can also involve me holding tense stress positions, which I do sometimes and often actually find myself in, and that also has its own consequences. Once I'm in this position, I start to then, so it's like a dance battle between the brain and the body, the mind and the body. And I can understand, I think, I feel like with this slightly loose relationship that I have between my thoughts and my feelings, my headspace, if you like, and my somatic realization of the world through my body, because that's already a little bit more distant than the norm, it does feel very confusing and overwhelming. So my neurology, the way that my brain is wired with the ADHD, definitely makes it easy for me to dissociate. So that's a coping strategy that is comes naturally to me because I've already got a slightly loosened or lessened association with my or relationship with my body. So when I'm under stress and my brain power is sucking a lot of resources, then it's easier for me to let go of my body. During this time, my feelings are I am getting overwhelmed and I'm wanting to start doing some avoidance behaviors. So I want to withdraw. I might want to abscond, run off from a situation, shut people out, and often that can be quite I suppose dramatic, although usually for me it's not quite as dramatic. I often try to take a little control or explain myself very early in the piece and say, well, no, it's not that, it's this and I'm feeling this. And I get quite verbose and demanding of it cry for help, really. So I can be a bit like that. Look, just stop it and do. And I suppose that's trying to affect my external environment a little bit and have some support. But often all of that results in a loss of hope because it's really hard for other people to understand what's going on in those moments. And the best thing for me to do is get away. But sometimes in society, people, I suppose when I'm overwhelmed or shut down or not functioning well, and it like I said, it may not be dramatic, it's just I won't go into myself, then there are times when other people want to help you in those situations, and again that can actually fuel the shame and loss of hope, because very, very often people do not have a clue what's going on because it's very individual. And so the person who knows best is me. To be honest, I know what's going on for me. What I can't do is stop it. I haven't got the skills to stop it. But what I'm learning more about myself is that may always be the case for me, because my reality is unique, and I also have a strong sense of a strong value for freedom. I like to be free, and I do not like to be controlled by other people or to have other people dictate my narrative to me. That really winds me up, and it's a massive trigger for me. So it might be that this is my my burden, this is what's in my backpack for my life. However, where I can set myself free is advocating for myself, setting my own boundaries, and starting to then direct what, if only people would listen. So the loss of hope can be countered by people going, okay, we trust you, we've got your space, we'll listen to you, let's help you find some peace so that we can break this cycle. But what if the cycle continues? Well, the cycle will continue until safety, until I'm safe and secure. And you can imagine when, especially as a child growing up, where the ability to take control and create that safe space and have safe people around was a lot less under my control than it is now, because you're limited to the number of options that you have as a young child, and even the capacity. I mean, it's only recently in the last sort of period of time, year or two, literally year or two, where I've been able to actually intercept what goes on for me in these spirals and actually start to unpack it. But basically, yes, so this spiral of ruminating thoughts and whatever, and shut down, so mental disconnect. So it's a quiet quitting, really, is what happens to me. My body goes quietly and quits the world. My functionality goes bad. I feel like I have to not do a lot of physical stuff because I can't trust my tired self, as they say, and I do end up hurting myself during those times because of the lack of awareness and connection with my body. So that cycle can be quite damaging, and it's extremely tiring, and I need to basically be helped or help myself to break that cycle by first of all getting rest. Once I've had some rest, I'm typically I find myself feeling a deep sadness because not again. This is a lot of resources, and this can take time. So when I've been through one of those washing machine cycles, I can lose a whole week trying to get back on track, and it affects everything from my digestion, how easy it is to go to the bathroom, even the type of foods that I crave or want to eat, and everything, even my physical pain, my level of physical pain, because I do have this tendency to hold myself in tense positions, and that can, along with the clumsiness, cause me to hurt myself. And I quite often come out of these, elevated or dysregulated states, noticing that my back is really sore. I've got muscle cramps. I might have splinters from where I've been doing things. I've got unexplained bruises all over the place because of running into things when I didn't know. I might have even lost things forever because, of my dissociated state of trying to sort of put things away or put things down, and not perhaps or not even make a choice of where I dropped my things. But I do get through it, and I am getting through these washing machine cycles a lot quicker now. So I'm on a quick spin, I guess you'd say, quick flip out and a quick rinse, and then I'm back in the game. Although when I say quick, I'm talking about possibly a whole week, as opposed to months, which it used to be. Before I was aware of my ADHD, autism, trauma, and whatever, this difficult, dissociated, detached and confused and overwhelmed state would go on a lot longer, to be honest. So I'd become what would, I suppose, be called a functional dysfunction person. So I'd learn to function within the gaps, and I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of my life was in that functional dysfunction space. That is not good for us, and that's what has caused, I ended up breaking my back while in that state. I have actually clenched so much during the night in the past that I've cracked not wisdom teeth, whatever the teeth are at the back, cracked through teeth. So this is an awful lot of tension, pressure and problems that come out as a form of self-harm, which is absolutely not intentional and chosen. And I have a feeling that my body holds these stress positions and stresses up in an attempt to get me to reconnect with it. So to break that dissociative state, it's like, oh, come on, you're tensing up, you're getting cramp. Oh, now you've noticed your foot, now you've noticed your hand. But it's a very dysfunctional way to do it. It's not helpful, and it's certainly not healthy, and it's not chosen. So it has taken me a long time to realize that's what happened. But it's not all bad. Things do get better. And once I've had time to get myself in a safe place, and I'm the judge of that, because my safe place and what I need is going to be somewhat the same. There's a pot of stuff that always helps, but the actual conditions are going to be different depending on what's triggered me, how bad I've got, how tired I am, and what environment I'm in. So the number one thing that I can start to do when I'm in my safe place is stimming, which can be fiddling with things. It could be fiddling with something like a little popping thing or whatever, because there's an awful lot of energy going through my system when this has all happened. It's like electric wires firing off everywhere and causing chaos in the brain. And this stems from thoughts. This mental illness is a thought problem. So there's problematic thoughts that then go on to create a wave of problems through my body. So getting rid of some of that energy through stimming can be quite helpful, and a stim can be quite passive. It could even be stroking a dog, could be doing an activity like knitting or sorting or whatever, and I come to that in a minute. Ultimately, what really helps me is working through my thoughts and my feelings, getting in touch with my feelings and actually replaying. So some of that perseveration of going over and over thoughts is actually helpful. So usually, we never do an activity without there being some gain. It's just that when my brain has gone chaotic, into that chaotic mode and lost its sense of time and space, it's become disorientated. Some of the things that would otherwise help me get out of it become the problem in and of themselves. So perseveration of thought makes things worse in that time, but then having doing the same action time and time again, which is like the somatic version of the thoughts, really can be quite helpful. Even if like popping one of these poppers for hours on end is not actually a good use, it's not a helpful use of my time anyway, it's not achieving anything, it's not really serving a purpose other than to sort of calm me down. So it's the same as the thoughts but in the body, but actually that does help. It sort of has a calming effect. And then working through, so once I've recovered enough mental faculties and had a bit of a rest, so rest is on that list as well, then I can start to process. And usually the best way for me to process is through being creative and sublimation. So taking away some of that blame, shame and negativity and transforming it into art. Poetry maybe is quite good, rhythmic poetry, you know, drumming, anything like that, where I can create a pattern and an order and a rhythm that's going somewhere, something that like that gets you on board. You know, that's what I need to do. I need to create a pattern of thought and rhythm and rhyme, and then I will get out of this. That really helps. It starts to really lift my mood. Another thing that helps me is organizing. So if I don't have the insights at that time, and you can't force these things, so I might get an insight straight away, even when I'm in a big disastrous thing, or it might not come for a couple of weeks or months even, or something just hits me like out of the blue seemingly. But in that process of trying to rebuild myself, I find organizing tasks and sorting tasks really helpful. That could be things like filing my paperwork. It could be organizing a record collection or books, you know, sorting out, making shelves look pretty, doing a bit of cleaning around the house, doing even some quite aggressive weeding of the garden, you know, something like that. A task, digging, tasks that actually do show you some order. So they take something that's actually, you know, in need of a bit of love and attention, and they resolve the problem. And that somatic and whole body, but not quite as, doesn't involve as much mentalizing. It's just something that's quite nice and that you can sort of go with the flow a little bit. You're not trying to achieve, you're letting the process dictate the outcome. That's what I do. That is very rewarding for me, and it's quite useful. So instead of just sitting here popping this and staring at the wall, organizing, cleaning and filing and polishing and stuff like that is quite useful, because at the end of it you get a nicer environment to live in. And that nice environment is also very important for me, because that helps me feel comfortable and calm, but stimulated enough that the ADHD type of part that craves that novelty and whatnot is stimulated by what's around. So I like to have nice things around and bits and pieces to look at and little narrative stories in different corners of a room. But, you know, as long as it's organised and clean and neat, really. I find exercise really helpful, but only sometimes. So exercising physically and physically hard is definitely helpful, and it's something that I'm doing a bit more of now. I have been only bushwalking and walking, which is quite, I wouldn't say only, because we do live in the mountains, so it's always a challenge. There's always a hill to climb. However, actually physically exercising, getting the heart pumping, is something that I had let slip for a few years, and I'm picking up again now. That really helps, but it's very important for me to realise and remember that what I've been through in this mental cascading of anxiety is very physically draining, and it does leave my immune system very low. So I become quite prone then to picking up viruses, diseases, whatever's around. So I'm genuinely not that much of an ill person, but I can start to get very run down. So adding a lot of intense exercise at the wrong moment would not be the right thing for me. So again, that's something that I have to build up slowly, or be mindful of how I work that in. So what I do is I use my Garmin now, my watch, and have a look at, you know, how my body battery's going, how much sleep I've had, what kind of things I've been eating, and all of those data-driven external clues to see if my body is receptive and ready and has enough in the tank to go out and do something like smash out a few Ks on the mountain bike, or go for a, you know, up a vertical mountain, basically. Sleep is extremely important too, and definitely the right quality sleep. So I always check to see how much REM, rapid eye movement sleep I've had, and how much deep sleep I've had, because when you're when the brain is in such a dysfunctional state, it can be possible to have 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep, but very little of it being restful and restorative. So not much in the way of REM or deep sleep. I know when I'm getting better, when I'm getting about an hour and a half to 2 hours of both, depending, not doesn't have to be exactly that, but I need to click over at least an hour of REM and at least an hour of deep sleep out of a 7-hour to 8-hour period, and ideally it needs to be more like 2 and 2 out of a 7 to 8 hour period, and then I know that I'm really starting to reach peak health, which is where I want to be. And that's it. So how easy is that? Not. That's the thing, it's not easy, because life is not routine. My life is, I try to create as many routines in my life as I can, and as little in the way of chaotic demands as I can. So I like to have my I like to have a fairly big chunk of life very structured, and so I know what's coming and I can prepare and plan and schedule lots of time. But what happens is, of course, you know, you get opportunities, there's things that you just have to do, the world keeps turning, and then it can be really hard. The underlying structure, it's a bit like a house built on sand, I suppose, if you like, or maybe not that, I don't know what the analogy is, but it looks like I've got a solid grasp of things and a routine on the top. You put this structure in, but what often happens is that I get undermined, and that undermining is where these you know, all of the things that I need to keep my body and mind talking to each other in a healthy way and staying connected, they start to have sort of like the earth shift under them, and then the house starts to collapse, which is more the brain, and then in this messy, chaotic space I end up with the playing out the disorders and the mental illnesses that I have, which is the CPTSD and anxiety. So that's what it's like. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the process, or the linearity or the circularity really of what it's like for me going through a mental health challenge or dip in part of a cycle where, you know, this is just life, you know, nothing big has happened. There's it's just things getting a little bit too much, me finding you know, my mental battery's drained a little bit, and then boof, all of a sudden you're in that anxiety cycle, and that's something that then means you're mentally ill again for a period of time, or your mental wellness has been discombobulated, is a better way of putting it, and I'm in need of doing something. The last thing I'll say is that this type of this experiencing of being mentally ill or mentally less balanced, while it's definitely inconvenient, it can be costly, and it saps a lot of time out of your life. It's not entirely bad. Like, I don't want to frame it as all bad. It's not something that I would wish upon myself, and I'm trying constantly to not have these things, this experience. I don't want to live like this. However, there's a lot of learning and insight that can come, so I'm able to make these videos because of the work that I'm putting in, and I hope that I graduate to a point where I don't need to go through these spirals to have the insights, that I've got enough insights, or there's a bulk of information that can keep myself safe, and then all of this becomes more academic at that point, or a somatic memory that I can draw upon, as opposed to my actual reality. So that's what I'm hoping for myself. But I do recognise that it's a huge privilege to be able to go through something as dysregulating and upsetting and hopeless, and feel so hopeless and helpless and frustrated and sad. And I would have always in the past said I was just angry at the world. But it's such a privilege to be able to go through all of that and come out the other side and go, oh, I think I know what happened there. Because that's not always the case with mental illness, because the tool that we're needing to use to make sense of our experience is the very tool that's in a bit of a mess and needs a break. So I feel like this is amazing. I feel like it's an amazing thing. So I don't for 1 minute want people to, I can't help, you know, I can't make you feel a certain way, but this is very much a story of hope, of insight, and a journey towards a more balanced and peaceful way to be. Or probably a better goal for me, instead of seeking balance and to not have these dysfunctions happening, I think a better goal for me now, which is an insight I'm just having, is to recognize, to intercept and recognize and correct that cycle sooner. So accepting that these things might or could happen throughout my life, regardless to what work I do, and understanding that the way back home, just like in The Wizard of Oz, has always been within me. The answers are always within me. And now if I could only just get other people in the world, and I'm not talking about everybody, I do have some very good people in my life right now who are very supportive and who really do understand and want to understand more. But I think what I'd say to anyone who's watching this, who might have a person, a loved one like this, or cares for someone or wants to do better in this space, is that there's a lot of fear about people who say they've got mental illness or who you perceive to be mentally ill. And there's a desire, a gut desire to fix them, help them, solve their problems for them. If anybody out there in that position is feeling anything like me, that approach will trigger them. And that's what you don't want to do. Even if it doesn't trigger them, unless someone is explicitly and with a certain degree of right-mindedness asking you for help, don't run into savior mode. It's probably one of the worst things that you can do. So what do you do instead? You hold space. You accept in a non-judgmental way. You recognize that this person might be feeling shame, they might be blaming themselves for a lot of this, and they might be deeply upset and even traumatizing themselves because yet again and again they're in a position they don't want to be in, that's scary. They might be fearing losing their mind, that they won't be able to recover from this. So if you do find yourself in a privileged position of having somebody in your life or in your circle who you feel might go through this, or you know because they've told you, then the last thing to do is go and save them. The first thing to do is go and sit next to them and say, I hear you, I see you. Is there anything that I can do for you? And that person may say no. They may say go away. And if they say no and go away, then that is possibly the right thing to do. You might not feel it's safe to go away. You might say, okay, well, I'll just stop talking to you for now, but I don't feel comfortable going away right now because I'm a bit worried about you. Do you mind if I sit over here? Ask permission. Ask permission. And treat people in this situation like they do have within themselves the tools to solve their problems, because they probably do, and you can probably learn from them. There's not much that we can teach other people about their deep selves, because we're not them. And we might never know. We might never fully understand, and that is not a problem. It's only a problem when you try and enforce that on them. I hope that helps everybody, including myself.